Hi guys, it is Disabled Doll Week. It is day one, which is Spotlight on Disability and what disability means to me. So my name is Maybe. I am a disabled doll content creator, loosely, loosely on that term content creator. I'm just a disabled girl who fell in love with dolls and now I post them online and quite frankly, can't stop talking about them to everybody I know. And especially you guys, as you know, because you're in my DMs all the time and I love it. But yeah, so I threw out the other day, I was like, who wants a little bit of a lore drop for Disability Week? And, I was like, who are my nosy folks out there? Because I'm a nosy girl, and quite a few of you guys are. So, yeah, so here you go. Here's a little lore drop.
Hey guys, editing maybe here. I just wanted to pop in really quick. I'm about to give you a awareness talk about what this story and content hold, but in editing, I just felt maybe perhaps I was a little too gentle, and I just want to be clear. This is a story of my life and how I got disabled. And so I am absolutely not giving you guys subject matter that is way too hard or heavy to handle. This is just a vague discussion of what I went through and how I got disabled, and that includes stories of injury. So I just want to be clear, if you're someone who cannot handle that, even if I'm being vague, even if I'm being lighthearted, even if I'm laughing in telling you the story, if it's not for you, 100%. And again, I'm about to repeat myself in a moment and remind you. So sorry for the repetition, but I did just want to make that abundantly clear if it wasn't clear already. Also, I do want to let you know, I do curse in this video, I do curse in this retelling, and I just kind of curse in life. So if that is not your vibe, and especially if you have little children around, perhaps this video is not for you. But again, I am really not too hard and heavy on anything. I am not cursing F-bombs or whatever. I do try and keep it light, keep it simple, but again, it may be 13 plus. So I'll leave the discretion up to you. If you guys are interested, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining me. And now back to the video.
I'm going to stick it to just my disabilities. I'm not going to give like the full story background, but if you're not interested in lore drops or if any kind of discussion of struggles in life and that comes with it trauma and other types of struggles that are not just disabilities, if that is to you considered just like a full trauma dump, like this is a great place for you to bow out. I'm not getting into anything hard and heavy at all. I am just going to talk about the realities of life and how they can result in disabilities. So that will be this story for a little bit. But yeah, so today's day we are to spotlight disability, and that's funny because I have like a million of them, it feels like. So I was born with spina bifida, which is that your spine is not properly fused. And the funny thing about that, not so funny when I use this word in this story, is I did not find out until I was an adult. Like, how fun is that? They just decided to not tell me. Making faces you guys can't see. They just decided I didn't need to know that. And so all my life I had a lot of pain. I had a lot of struggles that I didn't understand. Fortunately, my version, the type of spina bifida I have, or the level or degree, whatever the term is, the degree of spina bifida that I have is so minor. I guess that's why they did not think that I needed to know, but it does not affect me. So people who have it very bad, um, it affects more than just their posture. It affects how they walk and all of that stuff. And for me, that was not the biggest effect. I do have spinal weakness. I do have back weakness and therefore postural and body weakness. So it absolutely did affect me. And especially not knowing was very confusing and whatever. But I do have to say, I do have it in a very minor way. Yes, it affected me, but if you're picturing somebody with it much more acutely than I do, I don't have it that to that degree. But I do also have scoliosis, and that also brings pain and its own struggles. So you can understand that I grew up having just weird, vague body pain. And then all throughout my life, yay, this is so much fun. While still a child, not only did I have weird, vague body pain, that now I do know I've since been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I could see it not only was like affecting me, in that ways, it's affecting me so much worse now, but I'll get into that in a minute. But so throughout my childhood, I did have fibromyalgia start to develop it, and I really started to see it more in high school. But again, did not understand. But also, what happened before that is in fourth grade, I got my first concussion. Did not understand that either. I started to kind of lose my vision. I had a massive headache. I did not get knocked out or anything, but I definitely was down for the count. And I did not, I don't even know if I told my mom. I just kind of think I told her I hit my head. She certainly wouldn't have known to recognize my symptoms as a concussion. And it wasn't until eighth grade when I got my second concussion and I fully lost my vision and I was tripping over things. And then this time I had to be taken to the hospital. Then did I understand what I experienced for or whatever, however many years earlier. So yes, so life was going swimmingly, and by swimmingly I mean not. So life was going strugglingly. And if you've seen any of my previous posts, you have seen me talk about, now this is the lore that I can drop later, but I'm not going to get too hard and heavy into any of it right now, but it is relevant to now. I was raised in a very strict religious, not just household, but culture. And with that comes a lot of the things that it comes with. And again, I won't be too specific, but a high control religion is obviously going to be linked with patriarchal values, very, very anti feminism values, a lot of misogyny and a lot of blame and shame and self-hatred, and it really, those religions and culture groups and relationships that you have, whatever, they really, and I'm not even trying to be critical of religion as I say this, I am just simply being observational. I mean, I'm happy to be critical, but right now I'm just really keeping like it light and headline only, but they really do celebrate, or I don't mean celebrate in the way of like party and whatever, but they really do kind of reinforce a sense of struggle, a sense of, like I said, self-hatred, even though they will say, oh, we're about this type of religion, we're about these types of beliefs, and they're all good and positive. What the constant rhetoric is, what the constant reinforcement is obviously self-denial, um and a lot of psychologically and emotionally damaging mentalities. And so if I've already offended you with just saying that, I do apologize for you, but like, I don't take back anything I said. This is true. And not only is this stuff so psychologically and emotionally damaging, it's more than that. But again, I'm keeping it light and easy. It is also linked to autoimmune diseases. Now, not every autoimmune disease is caused by trauma and stress. You can be born with something, some things can be genetic, but a person raised in a environment where they are day after day after day convinced that there's something wrong with themselves, that there's something wrong with their body, can creates so much stress and trauma in the mind, in the psyche, and in the body that it can literally create an autoimmune disease where the body then kind of turns in on itself. So you guys can look into the peer-reviewed studies on that. You can look into the trauma research on that. I am not here to get all philosophical nor scientific on that. I am just here to say that occurs and that there is a high link between women, specifically it occurs to men too, but more and more women raised in high control religion are more likely to have an autoimmune disease. So, again, like I said, this stuff is hard and heavy, but I'm not trying to get too deep. I am just trying to keep the reality of these things as easy breezy as I can because I am here to talk about what my disabilities and what it means to me. And so you can infer many struggles from that. And like I said, if anybody wants more lore drops, like please feel free to ask questions. I am not going to get into it right now myself in this current moment that I'm speaking, but feel free to ask questions. I truly am an open book, and I'll talk more about it later. But the thing with everything that I just said about how your body can turn against you due to stress and whatever is I have, for me personally, for my disabilities, is I do not have a very specific autoimmune disease. I watched multiple of my female friends. Well, I watched worse. I watched worse things happen with people from all genders, but multiple of my female friends did end up developing or later get in their adulthood get diagnosed with several different autoimmune diseases. And so some of them were urging me to get those same tests as my health continued to get worse and worse and worse in my adulthood. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I felt that something was wrong with me and I could tell. And then I got into, you guys brace yourselves, so trigger warning for anyone. But then I got into a car accident. So I just want to throw a trigger warning if anyone else has themselves been into a car accident, that, I'm myself still working on my PTSD and healing from that. And if I just also heard that, it might trigger me just slightly, just be like, oh. So I just want to give out a little warning for anybody. But I did get into a near fatal car crash. I was hit on my driver's side by a semi truck, by a Mack truck, an 18 wheeler, and I was thrown to the other side of my car, even with my seatbelt on. And it was near fatal because, and again, I'm going to keep this just headlines only, but they basically thought I was dead when they saw my car. When they saw me, they thought I was dead. Then they saw I was still alive. They had an ambulance coming, but they called a helicopter because I was in such bad way. And then they realized I was in such an even really bad way that a helicopter wasn't even going to do it. So they were going to take me to a better hospital via helicopter. And the one I went to is an excellent hospital, but they were going to take me to a truly highlighted, celebrated trauma hospital. But I went to an excellent trauma ward. Anyway, so they take me via ambulance and they think I'm going to die in the ambulance on the way there. They literally did not think that I was going to survive. And every step of the way, I did, obviously, hello, I'm here. I did survive. And this is all trauma and PTSD and stuff I am still working through, the religious stuff included, the car accident, obviously, still included. It has been over 10 years now since that car accident. It has been well over 10 years, I think 12 years now. But it, messed me up severely. I clearly did not die, but I had multiple, 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 multiple injuries that doctors, some of which they saw immediately, and some I did not understand until years later. And I'm still now seeing specialists, and they're helping me with my muscles, and they're helping me with things and that the hospital, what they can do is they can do organ. If somebody loses an organ, if somebody has organ issues of whatever variety, if someone has bone or whatever issues, they're going to do the immediate care. But for me now, I had so much more, just like my muscles, everything just got impacted in ways that I don't even know how to describe. And I'm still seeing specialists to basically be the Humpty Dumpty who is still being put back together again 12 years later. So what happened for me in the car accident is my pelvic bone got shattered. For me, it was shattered literally, as my orthopedic surgeon said, that I quote unquote broke the crap out of it. Like, it just broke in 6 or 7 different places, just absolutely shattered. And I had to have surgeries, putting metal in and then later taking some metal out. I still have some permanent metal that will be with me for the rest of my life. I had 7 broken ribs. One of them pierced my lung, and I had a collapsed lung. So I had, I was bleeding. I had, I couldn't breathe. I was thrown on the other opposite side. Like, I couldn't move. And you know what's so funny? Like, literally, like, this is funny. Like, not pretend funny. This is legitimately funny. I obviously was knocked out in my car accident, and I kind of did come to when the first responders came. And I had to get, like, the what do they call it, the claws of life, the jaws of life or whatever. They had to cut me out of the car, all this shit. And I was very traumatized, and I was like crying. I kind of remember just like in and out, waking up crying, like whatever. But the funny thing is, like, when I kind of woke up just like a little bit more, I think it was now, like, like the first responders were coming in, and they're trying to come in and get me, and I was so, like, obviously out of it, like. And I, for a moment, I was like, oh, people are at my house. I was like, hold on, you're coming to my space. I was like, hi guys, like, let me get up for let me get up for you. As if I was waking up from a nap, and I was like, oh, people are coming into my messy home, let me clear space on the couch for you, or something like that. And they were like, no, 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 you don't move, you don't move. And I was like, okay. And I laid back down.
Meanwhile, I couldn't have even gotten up even if I wanted to. I just was so unaware. between obviously my shattered hip bone, between all my broken ribs and a collapsed lung and a concussion. There was no getting up. Getting up was not happening for me. But like, I think my eyes were lifted towards them. I was speaking to them, and in my mind I was like, oh, let me just sit right up and move things over for you guys in my space, like, welcome. And they were like, no, 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 we got it, like, like, please don't move. And I was like, okay. And I lay back down, but it's like, quote unquote, lay down. Like, in my mind, I was like, sure, I'll go back to sleep, take another nap. Oh my gosh.
So I just want to share like a funny little story because it is really traumatic for me to share this, and it might even be hard for you guys to hear it because it's like, oof, it's a bit rough. But yeah, so I got taken to the hospital. I ended up having concussion. I was later diagnosed with post-concussive syndrome, and yeah, they had to reinflate my lung. They had to, like, allow me to heal. I was walking around with like a chest tube in, and it actually took like quite way too long. Like they said, like, because kids like in sports or whatever have like a collapsed lung, like it's not too uncommon, and it should take like a few days for them to like be back together again and like back, but like mine just was not inflating. Mine was not inflating, and I was in the ICU for way too long. And I remember the nurses telling me like they only want people in the ICU for a few days tops because like then like it's such a sterile environment. You're more at risk for you know issues if you're in the ICU for too long. But they could not move me out of the ICU until my lung reinflated, and it just wasn't for like a week and a half, I think, or something like that. And then I was finally moved into the surgery ward where I had to practice, and right from the get-go, from the ICU, I had to practice walking again as soon as my hips would allow it. They got me moving as best as they could, and yeah, then I had to learn how to walk again. And like I said, I'm still working with specialists, and to get me to be the best that I can be. And so I'm very struggling. And so, yeah, so since then, I did learn how to walk again. I was going back to life. I was able to, very tired, very slowly, and with, great care, but I was walking on my own, through maybe airports and museums. I need a wheelchair, but despite that, I was still able to travel the world. I've gone places, and something was still very wrong with me, and I did not know what. And I was slowing down, and then I started getting more and more sick. I started catching every sickness that everybody I knew, was getting. This was a few years before COVID, so not COVID, but like if somebody had a cold, I caught the cold. You know what I mean? You're not guaranteed to catch the cold, just because you're around somebody with a cold. If someone had a stomach bug, maybe it would pass two people, but I always caught it, and I just was getting more and more sick, catching everything. And, I was doing really well after my car accident, like I said, learning how to walk again, traveling the world. And now I'm just slowing down. I'm not clear. My brain is not clear. I'm really struggling. And I was just, I peaked, and then I started plummeting. And now I'm getting worse and worse and worse, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why. And I went back to the hospitals. I was like, I need more brain scans. Like, something's going on with me. I'm like, I can't concentrate. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm like, I'm really struggling. I can't fall asleep anymore. I can't wake up anymore. I just really was struggling. Insomnia was taking over my life. Fatigue was taking over my life. And confusion was taking over my life. And the CT scans showed very little. And by that, I mean nothing at all. And I just was left without answers. And so, yeah, so from there, I basically was now starting to put together more and more things. It was because of my car accident that then they told me, they're like, oh, you have spina bifida. And I was like, why the hell am I only finding this out now? And, so I'm trying to figure out this, that, and the other thing. And it was at that point in time that life, my body, forced me into a complete stop, into a complete still. I could no longer work anymore. I could not sleep anymore at night. I was sleeping all day long, awake all night. I had absolutely no control over this either. I was, people were constantly telling me, oh, just wake up earlier. You like, as if that's going to solve this. Cause I was like, something's wrong with my brain. Like, something is wrong with my body. Simply like trying to like wake up earlier is not resetting it. And in fact, when I did try and do that, if I did not get full sleep, if I did not let my body just sleep whenever it wanted, however it needed, I just was in so much more pain. I just was in complete pain. chronic pain every day. Just pain, 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 pain in my muscles, in my back, in my hips. I was doing yoga before and now I'm stiffening up and I could barely walk. And I did not know why. And to this day, I still do not have a clear answer other than the vague diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Like I said, I do have it. I have been diagnosed and I have seen, it get worse throughout my life. But why I was so much better at that point after a severe injury and why I'm so much worse now, all I had to go on was trauma. And at that point, I did not know that I had quote unquote trauma. I did not know that all of my life experiences were bad and wrong and were studied by scientists and philosophers and all of this stuff. I just simply was in a high control religion, brainwashed by this environment that I was in, by this culture that I was in, and just constantly receiving this endless outpouring of negativity towards myself, about myself, whether it was about me specifically or as a woman or as a human person. I did not know that this was not normal. I did not know that this was not healthy. I did not know. And so at that time at which my life just, brought everything to a close and pulled me into a standstill. And I couldn't sleep anymore and I couldn't work anymore and I couldn't go out anymore and I couldn't live or do anything anymore. I had nothing to do but just lay in bed in complete fatigue, complete chronic fatigue, complete confusion, complete fear. And I just turned to my phone and I was just living my life through the online world, which is something I still do quite to this day, which is how I found you guys on AGIG and AGTube. So, yay. Anyway, and then it was at that point that I was able to deconstruct. And again, this is me, as much as I'm telling you right now, this is me not going into it. This is me giving you the headlines. I'm telling you, I went through the ringer. If you think this is like bad, like then you don't want to hear what else I've got to say that I'm not saying right now because I went through the ringer. But yeah, so it was at that point in time I turned online, and I was not very online before at all. Like the internet was not new at that point at all, but I just was not like an online person. And then I became very online and I began learning a lot. My friends, learning a lot. And I completely deconstructed my entire religion. I pulled myself out of it. I started learning about this, that, and the third thing and everything. And I started digging into understanding about trauma, what it is, about abuse, about high control religions, about being abused as a person, being in an abusive household, being, what that does to the brain, the psychology of it all. I am like halfway to a degree into psychology, just from all the stuff that I've read. Never having been formally educated, I have just learned so much about trauma and its effects on the brain and how that will then affect your body, and it will just do everything it can to, like, pump the brakes on all the body systems so as to protect the heart, and that your body and your nervous system trapped in activation, whether it's fight response or if it's like, fight or flight or whatever. And then when you go so far beyond that and you're so stressed out, and you're carrying like a traumatic load in your nervous system, you shift into the freeze response. And so that is what I think I can assume, because like I do not have like formal diagnoses on this besides fibromyalgia, is that I have just been through so much terror and carried so much literal terror and fear in my body, and stress and panic and self rejection and all of these ideologies that do not really align with, actual like proper neurology and a proper functioning brain and nervous system. And basically my brain and body just screeched to a halt and, just went into ultimate protection mode. And so that's where I feel like I still am, and I am very much working with multiple professionals to get myself out of it and to get myself healing. And yeah, and so what that looks like for me, disabilities, is chronic pain all the time every day, which again is improving with my one of my specialists. Chronic migraines. I have severe PTSD, as you can assume. I have severe CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. So PTSD, just to give a quick explainer, is like a one-time thing. Like for me, my car accident, like something happened that has caused, that has affected your brain and body so much that has caused fear and PTSD to, like, remain in you. And now it shifted your neurology, it shifted your neural pathways, it shifted your behavioral and physical responses. And so now you respond to this terrifying moment or time in your life, continuing forward. That's what PTSD is, but it's related to just regular PTSD is related to like a one-time thing. So it could be like me, like I said, a car accident. It could be for some people an assault, or it could even be like, if you're a soldier in a war and you've got like a start date to an end date, right? um, or people who have gone through other certain things. And again, we don't need to be like splitting hairs over like what it is or what it isn't, but just that's a general way to look at it, and understanding. And then CPTSD, complex PTSD, is when it's a bit more spread out and vague and it's kind of part of your everyday life. So, i.e., abusive relationships, abusive families, like your childhood trauma, or some other such more vague, long, drawn out thing, where the PTSD is, or the thing that was causing the PTSD is mixed in with your entire everyday life, and it's not just isolated to a moment or an external thing. Does that make sense? And again, you can look in for a better definition. But I have both of those, right? The car accident and then the complex trauma. So basically, that's where I'm at. I have fibromyalgia, chronic migraines. I have chronic insomnia, chronic fatigue. I have ADHD very bad. And I have also, from my car accident, I forgot to mention, I have a brain injury, which affects my vestibular region of my brain. And it causes me a visual processing disorder, basically. So basically, I cannot look at anything moving too much, wiggling around. If someone's like shaking their foot or tapping their pen, I have to literally look away. Hanging out with my nieces and nephews, if they suddenly start moving and fidgeting back and forth, I have to like ask them to go into another room, or I myself get up and leave so as to not, disrupt them. If somebody talks with their hands too much, I cannot watch that. If there is too much movement, I literally cannot look at it, because I will get very dizzy and sometimes very sick and nauseous. And if not dizzy, sick, and nauseous, or, with that, it maybe, and or it can fully put me into a shutdown, and my eyes get heavy and tired. My brain is shutting down, and it's too much overwhelm. It's too much process. My body can't, it's too much my body is trying to process out, and it can't watch all of that, and it can't handle it. And I'm just absolutely shutting down. A flickering candle, it'll just take me out instantly. So that is a big struggle. This is not fun. This is not fun. And I can't be shaking too much. So it's like so annoying. I have to go to my boyfriend. I'm like, please stop shaking the couch. Like, please stop moving. And so I am aware that like my disability could be like annoying to other people. And I don't even mean that in an ableist way. I'm just very well aware, like, you know, it is what it is. So that is the story of physically what my disabilities are. I still, like I said, I could walk around and went around, the world and whatever, but now I struggle to walk. Now I'm sure you've seen some of my posts, or maybe if you haven't, but I have posted about that. Sometimes I need a rollator. I obviously used to need a wheelchair, and then I progressed to a walker. And now, like, I have a little rollator that we keep around the house. So we have a little shower chair that we keep in the shower. So these are not things that I need to use every day now anymore, but they are mobility aids and equipment that I absolutely do need to keep in the house. God forbid when I need it, because sometimes my body will just lock up and I'll be fine and fancy free, feeling great. Next thing I know, I sat on the couch weird or too long or something, and my whole left side is locked up, and now I'm limping and I can't even get myself up to go to the bathroom. Like, so that's how it is. So it comes and goes. I've got good days, bad days, obviously. Migraines, of course. Sometimes I'm like, oh, like today, right now, I'm talking through a migraine. And I'm like, wow, this is the best migraine I've ever had in my life. The other day, it was debilitating. And sometimes I had such excruciating pain, light flashing through my eyes. I'm crying, sobbing. I swear to God, I had PTSD from that migraine. I was crying, sobbing for 2 days after that, because my brain was just remembering the pain. It was crazy. So I do not know what's going on with my body, other than I think just the alarm bells have gone off for too hard, too long, were too loud. And I was taught to ignore them. I was taught to, like, just let them ring and, willpower through them. And now my body is shot and my nervous system is a wreck. So this is the very not fun but very real story of what I'm struggling with, and I'm continuing to work through it every day. Some things I'm very well aware I may have for the rest of my life. Some things I am still very hopeful that I will see progress in. And some of those things, every once in a while, it hits me late at night and I'm like, am I effing delusional for hoping that I might have change in some areas? So it gets me, but this is the reality. And you can tell by my voice right now, or by my posts, I really try to keep just a positive outlook on everything. I really just try and be like happy go lucky. Like, I don't even try. Like, that's my personality. I'm like a very buoyant, happy, fun, friendly personality. Love to connect with people. But my disabilities make it really hard. So I do what I can do. But what my disabilities mean to me, now that I have talked to you guys for 45 minutes, thank you so much for listening. I have to say the biggest disability in being disabled, or the biggest struggle, I mean, in being disabled, besides the disability itself, right? Obviously, like pain is not fun. I just talked to you about chronic migraines that are debilitating, not fun. But one of the hardest things is for me is like, I don't have a clear visual marker. Like I said, I don't walk around with a rollator all the time. I used to be in a wheelchair, but I most certainly don't need it now because my injury was in my hips and a little bit in my spine. If I sit for too long, equally I have pain if I walk for, as much as I would if I walk for too long. So a wheelchair is as helpful to me as it is hurtful. So I can't just go around and be like, "Oh, well, if you can't walk, why don't you just go in a wheelchair?" Because then I'll have pain from that. And then if I need to walk around, now I'm encumbered by a wheelchair and I don't have the greatest strength anymore. Never did, and I most certainly don't now. So for me, having a brain injury, having invisible disabilities, and especially like I mentioned, like the autoimmune issues that I struggle with, is I never got a formal diagnosis for an autoimmune disorder. And yet I have all of the markers. I got tested for celiac, I got tested for lupus, I got tested for this, that, and the third thing. My inflammation markers are extremely high and they don't know what's wrong with me. I am constantly getting blood work done. If you guys have been following me for a while, you may have seen posts that like, like, oh, it took a doll to the doctor today, like going to get more blood work. I have I have had more blood work in just this year alone than most people get in their lifetime. And I'm quite frankly sick of it. But the end of the day is that I do not have a specific autoimmune disease, but my body is reacting and responding as if I do. And so fibromyalgia is not an autoimmune disease because it's not from the immune system, but it operates like one in that it is, from what I've gathered, is that it's just basically like a map of pain that your brain has created. And so it'll just strike an attack like whenever you get mildly stressed out, or maybe you just don't sleep well, and so you have pain like rotating all throughout your body. Like I said, one day it might be insomnia, next day it might be a migraine, next day I can't walk, or maybe then like it's in my upper back or it's in my lower back, or like it moves all around. So back to the point of why I'm telling you all of this is, besides just fun little quote unquote, there we go again with the word fun, quote unquote, fun little lore drop on me. If you're nosy, this is really like not the most scandalous or fun, juicy bit of story, but it is always interesting to get to know people and, see what's going on behind the scenes. So yeah, but the point of me saying this is, and sharing my story is, it is obviously Disabled Doll Week, like we started saying. It is day one. We are spotlighting on our disability and what it means to me. And so I really wanted to take a moment and take this opportunity to share my story, as I'm very well aware, as not many people are sharing this story with me. Um, Many people have autoimmune diseases, but not many of them, that I've met, besides like the people I know personally from my same story background, are having, autoimmune triggered by extreme religion and extreme trauma. So I'm well aware of that. I meet people from all walks of life, and, everybody's story is different. But the biggest thing is for me to be chronically ill in the way that I am. The biggest struggle, besides obviously the pain, the fatigue, just like the general, like an obvious, like struggles of being disabled, the biggest issue for me was being disabled in a way that was chronic and constant and yet unlabeled. I do not have a specific autoimmune disease, but I do have all the indications that I have one. My body is operating as if I have an autoimmune disease, but there's nothing specific in that they can tell, like what it is. I have been found to be negative for everything. So basically, my body is operating as if it's constantly under attack from something, but we don't know what. And so that's why all I can conclude is that all of my stress, all of my traumatic load that I've been carrying is just putting my body into complete shutdown. It has just been like, the engine has long been overworked. There has long not been any gas, no fuel, no proper care, right? And so the car is shutting down, breaking down. That is basically the best analogy I can have and for myself to just simply explain it. But this is now, like I said, 12 years since my car accident. And again, like I said, it didn't happen all at once. But this is me now explaining to you guys, having come to this understanding, having done this research, and now I have better specialists and better care practitioners and better people in my life to help care for me on like the day to day and, just the general experience of being disabled. But I specifically wanted to take this opportunity to share my story, as hard and heavy as it may be for some people to listen to, or even for myself to share, is because when you are dealing with this kind of non diagnosed, non clear, chronically ill, constantly sick, constantly can't participate in life issues where doctors don't know what's wrong with you, it is so terrifying. It is so confusing. The confusion I had for the past several years are probably its own trauma. I'm not going to lie. And it is probably part of the shutdown, like literally being sick and my body shutting down is its own trauma, probably that more greatly contributed to my body shutting down. It is so frustrating and stressful and humiliating and all of the words, to try to explain to people when they do take interest and they're like, well, what's going on with you, and they don't see your struggles, and they have these expectations on you to participate in life in a certain way, and you can't give a clear reason why. Because again, now I have an understanding. When I'm in it, I did not know about trauma. I did not know about how it affects the brain. I did not know about stress and its load on the nervous system. I did not know about all of this, at that point in time. I just knew I couldn't do things and I did not know why, and doctors kept telling me I was fine. And so that was so horrible to go through. Now my voice is light and airy. Now I'm telling you jokes. Now I'm cracking. Now I'm like, LOL. I'm disabled. But it was not very LOL going through it. It was traumatic. It was terrifying. And when you can't sleep, now you can't work, you can't go out, you feel like a piece of shit, if I could just be quite frank. You feel about 2 inches tall and you don't feel like a real person. You feel like a ghost living your own life, not even living your life. You're dead while you're alive. It is extremely miserable. So one of the days going forward is we're going to talk about mental health and we're going to talk about grief through all of that. So I am going to save that for, I'm going to save a deeper conversation for a later date and time. But I do want to share the very real struggles of watching yourself become more and more crippled, in a variety of different ways as the days go on. Oh, and I forgot also, I have like some kind of like sun phobia. Like I can't be out in the sun without a bucket hat, without my eyes properly covered, because otherwise, like I literally get sick. I get sick in the sun. I start shaking. I get nauseous. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Like it is the weirdest thing. Nobody knows what's wrong with me. They just call it like photosensitivity. Nobody has explained to me what happened or why. these all of these things just happened in the past few years. So if anybody, I swear to God, if anybody is like, oh, that sounds familiar, you might want to go get checked for XYZ thing, I will not be offended because like I have been checked for like everything under the sun, I feel like. But if there's something I haven't heard of or I haven't like, whatever, I've gone to a million doctors, but I know that not every doctor knows everything. So if you guys have any like kind of suggestions, I am not someone who gets offended by that. Like, please, somebody help me. But yeah, so going through all of these things, when you don't know what you're going through, and especially going through them alone, because if you don't have a good support system, right? Because there's a reason why I am as stressed out as I am, right? So if you don't have a good support system to get you through all of this, it only just mounts and mounts and mounts. And so that was really confusing and terrifying. And I see a lot of people, especially women, going through shit like this online where they are chronically ill, they don't have answers, and they just don't know how to explain it to their friends and their loved ones and to their community. And they're like, I don't understand why I can't participate in life. So I'm just here to say I am one of you guys. I do have a much better understanding as to what I went through and what I'm possibly going through now. And fibromyalgia too is just like no small thing. So that is like a large explanation, but also doctors don't know what causes fibromyalgia. And so I do believe that it is a pain response. I just believe that it's an extremely heightened pain response, and the body is just responding to all of the internal alarm bells and stuff. And so if you disagree with me on that, that's fine. I would love to hear you out. But yeah, so I have just spent the past few years doing everything I can under the sun to learn more about my upbringing, to learn more about certain systems, that exist, and to dismantle all of them, and to just really come to a much more, understanding of things from a scientific way, whether it be psychology, whether it be like, certain systems and structures. And again, I'm being vague, but that is what I have basically been doing in my healing journey, and that has brought me to now. So that is where I'm at. And I have to be honest, I am only, this is the fun part now, literally fun, I am only doing as well as I am doing right now because I got into dolls. And I shared a bit about that here and there before, and I just recently shared it again on my 1 year AGIG anniversary, which was about a month ago now, which is that I was just so full of all of everything I just described. I was so full of just being miserable all the time, so full of all my disabilities, and so sick and tired of just going to doctors and not getting help and not knowing what's wrong with me and not really like having anything clear. And yes, I was doing the work. Yes, I was like in therapy and like still am. And like, yes, I am doing the work, like I said, but I just was struggling on a mental health capacity. And then I discovered American Girl dolls, you guys, and that has brought me here. And I swear to God, it gave me such life. It literally gave me energy. I am not exaggerating when I say that American Girl dolls saved my life. Like, I'm not going to get too hard and heavy, but I just was getting so miserable and feeling like I had no point and no purpose in my life. And day after day, when like I can barely leave the house and I can't do anything, it's a struggle. And when I now am able to get into American Girl dolls and have a hobby that actually really perfectly and happily fits in with my disabilities and my personality, I'm telling you, it actually changed me night and day. And I have had a massive upward trajectory since. And I just think it really speaks to our psyche, to our nervous system, to our literal human psychological need to have hobbies and just whatever types of things in our life that we just literally love, that we just love, and how important that kind of love and joy is on our psyche, on our nervous system, quite literally, in our cells, our physical health, on our immune system, and on our neurology. Yeah, so I don't think it's an exaggeration at all to say, to speak in that way to the importance of American Girl dolls. So that is it. I have been talking now for a million hours. That is my lore drop. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much. That is my day one disabled doll week. That's my spotlight on disability and what disability means to me. So I actually am just remembering I actually have so many more disabilities I didn't mention, but it doesn't matter because who cares? Because you've got the basic basis of my story. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening. Again, I am an open book. If you guys have any questions, if you're like, whoa, girl, that was way too much, sorry. Sorry. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. I am an open book. If you are like, wow, I want to connect with you on this, like I have a similar issue, hit me up, be in my DMs. If you are just like, I'm a nosy bitch, I want to know more about your XYZ situation. Ask me questions. I truly am not offended. And again, if you're like, oh wow, I have related symptoms and you might want to get checked out for this, again, please help me. That I do not get offended by those things when people are like making suggestions and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, guys, thank you so much. Again, my name is Maybe. You can Oh, and going forward, I am doing all of this stuff to launch, to get myself into making to force myself into finally getting my YouTube going. Going forward after Disabled Doll Week, like my dialogues will not be like everything will be doll related. This is just like one big jump into the deep end to get you guys to know me better, for me to be able to share my story, because like, quite frankly, that's part of my healing. That's part of my healing journey. And again, I'll talk about it more later, but I can't stress enough how intricately connected to all of these struggles I have and my disabilities, that my dolls are. So this might be seemingly unrelated just because it's Doll Disabled Week. That might seem to some people as like the only relationship that my disabilities have to dolls, but no, I assure you, these dolls are now part of me. They are part of my disabilities, and they have. I am not exaggerating. I am not exaggerating when I say that they have literally revitalized me and really helped put me back onto a much more empowered and strengthened and just like much more determined, rededication towards healing. So thank you to American Girl. Thank you for creating these dolls. Thank you to my dolls. And thank you guys so much for joining me, for listening to my sorted little stories. And again, feel free to ask questions, and I will see you guys in other much more happier videos. And I'll see you on AGIG. Bye, guys.